Welcome to the SpineCloud International podcast, which is an initiative of the Primary Spine Provider Network. You can visit us at spinecloud.org for more information and to sign up for a lot of free stuff. This week we've got Dr. John Ventura talking to us about Dr. Scott Haldeman's spine care supermarket of available treatment options and protocols and interventions for patients with spine-related disorders. And then he talks about Dr. Haldeman's vision for a toolbox of necessary tools that good evidence-based clinicians should be making use of in helping patients with spine-related disorders. So these are some of the overarching principles that we want to be driving through SpineCloud, and we hope it's really helpful to you in your clinical practice, making the right decisions for your patients. Over to John.
Hi, this is Dr. John Ventura with another SpineCloud podcast for the Primary Spine Provider Network. The topic this week is Dr. Scott Haldeman's Spine Supermarket and Toolbox. Before I explain what I mean by those terms, let me give you a little bit of the background of Dr. Haldeman. A wonderful biography, The Journey of Scott Haldeman, was written by Dr. Reed Phillips. The last chapter is somewhat autobiographical, written by Dr. Haldeman, talking about the role of the primary spine provider to improve the efficiency and efficacy of spine care. That's a topic for another podcast. Dr. Haldeman received his DC degree from Palmer College of Chiropractic in 1964, his PhD from the University of British Columbia in 1973, and his MD from the University of British Columbia in 1976. He did a 3-year residency in neurology at the University of California, Irvine, and is now an associate professor of neurology at the University of California, Irvine, as well as a long career in the private practice of neurology, and an extensive career in research related to spine care. Dr. Haldeman served as the former president of the North American Spine Society. He was president of the United States Bone and Joint Decade Task Force on Neck Pain. And in 2008, he started a not-for-profit organization, World Spine Care. Their mission is to improve lives in underserved communities through sustainable, integrated, evidence-based spine care. They now have clinics in Botswana, the Dominican Republic, Accra, Ghana, Mumbai, India. This organization is a wonderful legacy for Dr. Haldeman after such an illustrious career as a clinician, an educator, and a researcher. So what does he mean by the supermarket approach to spine care? It's taken from an article written by Dr. Haldeman and his colleague Simon Desjardins, a DC PhD and now healthcare economist, in the Spine Journal in 2008. I'll read from you a short statement from the abstract of the article, and I quote, "Decades spent listening to presentations at scientific meetings, reading textbooks, discussing the problem with clinicians and patients, listening to advertisements on the television or radio, and browsing the internet could lead one to conclude that the classical model of making healthcare decisions based on scientific evidence and expert consensus appears to have been replaced with a commercial and competitive model, akin to shopping at a supermarket. This analogy is reinforced by visiting the commercial displays at spine meetings, where there is intense competition by pharmaceutical companies, surgical instrument makers, device manufacturers to convince stakeholders of the benefits of their products," unquote. They identified well over 200 treatments for back pain. So is it no wonder that our patients are utterly confused by the options available to manage their problem? The majority of these items identified in treating back pain have little or no scientific evidence supporting them. And even those that do have a demonstrated efficacy, none stands out much greater than others. We find criticisms by those participating with these interventions as claiming that the research about their particular approach is flawed and doesn't reveal real-world situations, when in fact the research is not all that flawed. It may be weak, but it's not all that flawed, and it does reflect real-world situations. And so what does Dr. Haldeman now refer to as the toolbox? This is taken from a statement by Dr. Haldeman at one of his lectures, and I quote again. One of the major problems we have in the whole spine world is that everybody thinks that they have the answer. No matter what your background, your profession, everybody has the hammer of some kind and perceives every patient with back pain as being a nail. My feeling is, and I think that research is making this a reality, is that we have to have a toolbox, not a hammer, unquote. I think we can take that idea even a step further if we frame this in the context of a term coined by Dr. George Engel from the University of Rochester. Dr. Engel coined this term back in the late 60s and early 70s, and he referred to healthcare as a biopsychosocial approach. I think spine pain could be considered the quintessential biopsychosocial condition. If we only address the biological component of spine pain, we'll help some patients, some in a very profound way, but we're going to miss a lot of the patients. The evidence for this is the rapidly escalating disability in spite of the rapidly escalating costs associated with delivering spine pain. So this notion of having a toolbox for the providers, of making this about the whole patient and incorporating not just your biological approach, but your psychological interventions and social interventions, and even within the biological, to frame it within the context of all of the aspects of the patient's life. How are they functioning? What activities do they most want to return to? When we start to look at spine care in that framework, then I think we can do a great deal to improve both the efficacy and the efficiency in the delivery of that care. And I think that's been what Dr. Haldeman has been advocating through his education, through his clinical practice, and through his years of research, is that we adopt this broader perspective in the way we're looking at back pain. And we stop seeing every patient as a nail that needs our hammer. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me for today's podcast, and I look forward to interacting with you in the Spine Cloud.